As I've gone along, I've sort of adopted the whole decide what to be and go be it kind of mentality. Every journey, it involves the first step. I guess to be a photographer, the first thing that you need is a camera. I'm just like, that's actually not the first step. The first step is deciding you're going to be a photographer. That's where the initiative and the drive comes from. And once you have that, then that's what's going to push you out of yourself to go out and actually see what it takes to become.
All right, so I'm sitting down with professional photographer Joshua Winders, and I am extremely excited to be having this conversation. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Jacob, for having me. I'm honored by your kind words and honored that you reached out. I love talking about what I do and the journey, so I'm excited to be here.
So for the people that are possibly just getting to know you or have known you for a while, I would just love for you to just explain who you are and what it is that you do.
Well, reading from top to bottom, my name is Joshua Kelly Winders, but most people call me JK. Most people probably know me as a photographer, but if I really get into it, that's such a small part of what I do. I'm a creative director and consultant. I work with businesses, kind of helping them streamline user experience, take on project management for different campaigns. And I'm a writer. I do copywriting. I'm a poet, just all around a storyteller. So there's a lot that goes into what I do, and photography may be the thing that has expanded my horizons the most, but it's such a small part of who I am and what I do.
Wow, that's incredible. That is a really long list, but that storytelling aspect, all of that basically sums up what is expressed through your photography, and it's so cool that you have so much background and so much context to who it is that you are as a creative, as an artist. And I mean, there's so many different mediums to being an artist and being a creative. And so it's so neat to have such an expansive creative portfolio. So how many years have you been doing photography specifically?
So I grew up in a very entrepreneurial minded family, but at the same time, we embraced creativity and artistic integrity. And if we really want to put a date on, when I started capturing with photography, the earliest memories I had were when we would go on, vacations. I grew up in Atlanta, and we would always go down to Florida every summer. And it would be, my immediate family, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins. My sister, she was older, so she would, be the one lounging by the beach. My cousins were way younger, and it was just kind of me. And I got bored very easily, so I kind of needed some sort of purpose amongst our 1-2 weeks together. And so we had all the disposable cameras. My dad had, I think, like maybe a Nikon or a Canon AE1 and a few rolls of films. And every day they'd hand me a disposable camera or one of their cameras with one of their rolls of films, and they're just like, okay, you got 24 shots. What are the things that you want to show the people back home that we did on vacation? So that was probably the first recollection of really taking on the mantle of attempting to do photography. And it's also really cool because looking back on that, that's sort of what maybe makes photography kind of a sacred thing to me, because I came into it before digital was a thing. And I'm definitely not going to knock digital, because I love digital. I love how it has served us tremendously. But there was something kind of sacred about, okay, there's only 24 shots. So what are like the moments worth capturing in those 24 frames? So that was very, very beneficial to my development. And then kind of getting into it on the cusp of digital, where all of a sudden there was this kind of like beautiful transition, and I really did kind of get to see how the medium changed and progressed over a quarter century, which is kind of daunting to say. So yeah, so we'll say 25 years is how long I've been clicking the shutter. And it was if we kind of keep going along the timeline, it was never one of those things where I was like this young prodigy, like walking around with my camera. The interest kind of came and went, and I had different passions that flourished and died in their own right. Throughout middle and high school, I wanted to go into film. That's what I studied. That's what I kind of wanted to throw myself into. Photography wasn't anywhere on my radar. There were times where I thought it was boring, actually.
Okay.
But at the same time, it is kind of like cool going through the past 20, almost 30 years. I'm not 30, almost 30. But it is kind of sort of interesting to see sort of how the interest in photography has kind of flourished in, you know, the social media parts of society and different areas of like that, because you hate referring to it as a fad, but social media has definitely elevated the medium and it's made it so much more accessible. I don't like going into how it can be oversaturated at times, because it does make for a nice big tribe, which I do like. I kind of like that you can go anywhere and you can find people to interact with that interest. I think that that's a big benefit. It no longer feels like an exclusive club, and it is something that anyone can take a crack at and grow in if they really decide to pour themselves into it.
No, that's a really great way of looking at it. I definitely agree with that. But going back into, like, you had said that you actually had been more interested in film at a time. What kind of brought you back into the realm or the world of photography that like really settled it for you? Like, this is what I am really passionate about, and this is really what I want to pursue.
Yeah. So I grew up in Atlanta, and then when I graduated high school, I moved to Los Angeles. I had a couple of friends out there, and I kind of thought that, you know, naturally wanted to go into film. That's where you had to be. But then I got out there, and it's just it's a beast that will, you know, chew up any kid right out of high school. But I still kind of made my attempts at it, and as sort of my way of acquainting myself with the city, I would go out on my bike. It just ended downtown. At the time, I think I had a Canon Rebel T3i, and I would just do street photography. And it was kind of, in a way, it was sort of therapy. It was just a way to kind of be creative without the stress of trying to create a film or trying to do it for money or trying to do it in any way like that. And it was just kind of a way to scratch that, you know, adventurous itch that I had at that age, because I was out there from 18, almost 19 to 22.
Oh wow.
And so while I was there, and while I was, you know, dabbling kind of in street photography, doing this was about the time that, you know, Instagram became a bit of like an up and coming way of sharing your work. And so I did what anyone did, and I posted on Instagram. And I hate admitting that the positive feedback was a bit of a nudging factor. I so hate admitting that, but it was. I was actually a part of a really big church community out there that was really great being a part of, because it was an artistic community. They had, you know, this was the kind of place that you would go, where you would go and like the pastor would be giving a sermon and someone would be up there painting, and, you know, they really edified artists. And so it was also really good being a part of that community, and there was a good photography tribe a part of that. And it was one of those kind of beautiful situations where it wasn't like they were grooming us to like come in and, you know, like capture like the worship band like during service or anything like that. We sort of just banded together and, you know, uplifted each other to kind of go out and find you know, righteousness in our own creative endeavors. But then I you know, naturally, as you know, being the guy with the camera, I had a bunch of actor friends, musician friends, models that constantly needed to have new headshots and new material for their portfolios. So I kind of started a little business doing headshots and editorial work. So I did that while I was in Los Angeles for a few years, and that was kind of really the start of nudging into doing it professionally.
You know, if you scroll way back in your Instagram, I'm sure you're going to see a lot of the earlier stuff, but as of what like people see right now as they scroll through your Instagram, a lot of it is adventure lifestyle. How did you kind of start into that, I guess you could say, niche or that style?
Number one, I never really wanted to find a niche, so I never landed on one. But I think I remember maybe the biggest experience that sort of started pressing me into that is this was when I was living in Los Angeles, and I was spending Christmas back in Georgia with family, and it was kind of at this point where I was just so sandpapered down by living in the city. I almost didn't want to go back. I didn't know what else to do, but I was just kind of dreading moving forward with my my LA journey. I think this was like maybe like right after Christmas, before New Year's. I was on Facebook, and I saw a friend of a friend from Los Angeles. You know, he posted on just like a social group that we had, and he put on there as like, visiting family in Georgia. I got a car off Craigslist that needs to be transported back to California. Is there anyone around that maybe wants to kick it on a little road trip? And I think I maybe thought about it for all of 5 seconds, and then I remember asking my parents. I was just like, does this sound crazy? And they were like, absolutely, but you do you, boo. And so I got on the phone with Southwest. I got those flight credits back, and I just kind of jumped on it. Reached out to this guy, cool guy. He was actually the drummer in the worship band for the church. So
Oh, no way.
we had known each other from afar, but we'd never interacted. So, you know, all of a sudden we're in the car, like motoring across the country, and making our way across. I had never seen the Grand Canyon up until that point, so that was something that we were able to do together. It was actually kind of funny. This would have been, I think, in 2013, maybe 2014, so almost 10 years ago. Again,
Oh, wow.
crazy to think about. But we did the hike down into Havasupai, which is where all the blue waterfalls is.
Okay.
And so this was way before it really got popular and like just absolutely crowded. We were the only people down there visiting, so we were able to do that. And it was just kind of this fantastic coming of age journey that kind of like revitalized me and just kind of re-jolted some of my vigor that I felt had kind of been wearing away. And then a few days later, we rolled back into Los Angeles, and then I kind of just immediately felt that like that slump of city life set back in on me. But in those subsequent months, I would start recruiting some of my friends to do just weekend getaways. So we would go out to Death Valley and Joshua Tree, Big Sur, Yosemite. We would kind of like do everything in the California area that was a reasonable drive from Los Angeles. And it kind of became one of those things where whenever I would leave, I would kind of feel that jolt again. But then coming back to the city, I started really getting into that feeling that was not where I was supposed to be. So from that point, I kind of took a leap of faith. I just packed up the car and went on the road. At that point, I was in like a super modest, like I think my first car, it was a Mazda 626. That was the car that got me from Georgia to Los Angeles. It shouldn't have gotten me from Georgia to Los Angeles, but you know, God had his hand on that car. But I upgraded. I got a Honda CRX, and I actually started picking up just little gigs with some tourism bureaus and different things like that all over. So realistically, naturally, it shouldn't have worked, but it somehow worked, and it became this adventure that I embraced just as a part of my life. It's like this is the story that I want to be able to tell, just kind of going out and being able to find these stories and capture that kind of beauty. And I'm kind of still on that road trip. I upgraded from that CRV about maybe 3.5 years ago. Gosh, actually almost 4 years ago. I was doing, some short-term sublets all over, following different gigs around, and I decided to upgrade because I was tired of packing and unpacking, not having my own space, and so I got this 25-foot Class C motorhome that I am sitting in right now.
Amazing.
And this is home base. I do the whole base of operations from here. I tow my motorcycle behind, and I bounce around all over the country. I like to chase seasons. I'm in southern Utah right now, enjoying a nice mild winter, and it's just kind of allowed me to embrace a different kind of life that is unique to me. And that, being an individualist myself, it does kind of feed that part of my ego, to where it's not like van life. It may not be as glamorous as van life. I'm in an RV park, so I do the resort hopping around. I'm connected to power and water. I'm not like out there completely roughing it, but it has created a beautiful life that I've been able to make it work for me.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because most people would probably be wondering, how in the world is this guy traveling so much? How is he like seeing all these these different locations, like that must be expensive, but it's so cool when you have that freedom to be able to travel as you need, wherever you want, and like you have your home right there, which is so cool.
Yeah. And so I guess to like go back to the initial question that you asked, I kind of, in terms of like getting into adventure photography, I got into adventure first and then just kind of like captured it as I went along.
I like that. As you said, you took that leap of faith. It's so cool that like you're able to find your passion in just taking that leap of faith. And I think for a lot of beginner photographers, like a lot of the reason why they spin the wheels trying to figure out what they're passionate about is because like they don't want to go out and try different things and new things. And I mean, even for myself, I've learned like a lot of learning is just trying. And it's so cool that you are testimony to that. How important is it to be positioned in a place where you're passionate about?
Yeah, that's such a good question. As I've gone along, I've sort of adopted the whole decide what to be and go be it kind of mentality. Every journey, it involves the first step, and everyone talks about. I was like, I guess like to be a photographer, the first thing that you need is a camera. I'm just like, that's actually not the first step. The first step is deciding you're going to be a photographer.
Yes.
That's where the initiative and the drive comes from. And once you have that, then that's what's going to push you out of yourself to go out and actually see what it takes to become. And not every photographer's journey involves getting out of your hometown. There's plenty of things to shoot in your backyard. That's always my first exercise to young photographers, like become a master of photographing your backyard, because once you become good at that, you become good at photographing everything beyond those horizons. And like you said, exploration is also key. That can definitely feed into if you want to niche down. What are your other interests? Where else do you explore? I know one thing that I did when I started RV life, I didn't want to tow a car. I didn't want to go into that hassle of doing that by myself. I just didn't want to deal with that stress, because I'd seen other people in the RV community do it, and it wasn't going to happen for me. So alternatively, I thought I'll get a motorcycle. That makes sense. I'll do that. Had never ridden a motorcycle in my life. I was like, I'm like a string bean, I'm not like biker type or anything. So, and it was never even like a desire in my mind. But I was just like, yeah, that just sounds easier. Sounds easier to tow a motorcycle than a car. And this was like right around the time that the pandemic hit, and I was in Colorado. I was visiting family because my sister had just had the first baby in the family. So we were all out there visiting, and I just kind of like musing. I had watched the videos, and I was just like, maybe I could do this. I'm not even good at like driving a manual car. Like, can I do this? Maybe we'll see. It was still a thought in the back of my mind. But then I like actually went to a dealership. I sat on a bike. I kind of like got it up where it was just like bouncing. I'm just like, this feels pretty good. And my mom was actually there with me, and
oh, no.
and I could tell that she was like kind of freaking out a little bit, but she was just like, but I remember it was an empty showroom because we were in pandemic time. She had just like shouted, she's like, can we get some help over here? Can my baby boy get someone to help him? So I had a guy come over, and we chatted for a little bit. And at this point I was like book smart, so I was like kind of trying to be just, I was like, oh yes, I see it's a 500. I see it has two wheels. That's very nice. So I was like trying to kind of BS myself, not to seem like such a beginner, but
yeah.
But I was in that showroom for like maybe an hour, like all of a sudden like envisioning it, and I was like, wow, I'm maybe I'm gonna do this. And I did. I put a down payment on it, and that's the bike that I have right now. I didn't know how to ride it. I got a spot in a motorcycle safety course, which going into it I was terrified. They put you on the back of like just a little like 250cc, and they get you feeling like the throttle control, and they go into turning and everything like that. As terrified as I was going into it, that was one of the most fun weekends that I've had in the last few years. And the instructors, they could tell just how scared I was, but they were just it was like that's good. The fear is going to keep you motivated to do good, to be safe, to succeed on two wheels. All of a sudden, like, we're, going through the courses, this and that. And before I knew it, we're like halfway through the tests to get your license. And I'm acing it. I'm like, I'm a motorcyclist. Never was a desire, never was something that I like yearned for. I like yearned for that freedom of two wheels. I just stumbled into it. And it is one of my favorite things in life. And then being able to have that passion and that interest and marrying it with photography and also the way that I write about motorcycles, that actually kind of attracted some very fun characters in my story. I've been able to bounce around and ride with like some really great crews that are also photographers themselves, but we have this other passion that we share that actually I think bonds us even stronger than photography does. And it all came from just trying something, just musing. Maybe I could do something a little different, a little daring. It's been one of my favorite journeys that I've been able to embark on in this life thus far. All because it's like my mom agreed to take me to the dealership, and I promised her that I'd always wear a helmet. And she loves it. She thinks it's the coolest thing. She wants my dad to get one now.
No way, that's awesome.
Yep.
That's sweet, dude. Amazing. That's honestly, thank you so much for sharing that story. I really definitely appreciate that, because I mean, it just like gives another level of depth into like being so determined in your mind to succeed and to win at all costs. It's like having difficulty of getting around, and that was just something very basic, but it's like it goes back and ties into your original story of like, just go out and try new things and like be okay with adventuring past your point of comfortability, and just be okay with going out and experiencing life beyond what you think you're capable of.
Absolutely. And I think that's maybe just like my big thing. You ultimately have to make your life your greatest piece of art. And that's so huge even in the behind the scenes. Don't go thinking that like I'm out on adventures like every minute every day. I have work that needs to be done. I sit down in front of a computer maybe longer than is probably healthy for a human being. But you have to be willing to put yourself in the way of beauty if that's what you want to capture.
I love that. Yeah, so just changing gears into a little bit more about storytelling. I know that we had talked about that at the start of our conversation, and I just kind of wanted to go back into that. So over the Christmas holidays, one thing that I really did enjoy, and I know most people did who follow you, was your daily storytelling of breaking down different images throughout your year. It was incredibly fascinating. I thought the stories were really well done, really well told. So I definitely commend you for sharing those. I just wanted to hear your thoughts on telling good story, because I know a lot of photographers, and I include myself in there, is like taking the cool shot. You know what I mean? The cool shots are fantastic, and it's like when you get those, you're like, this is awesome. Like, I'm so hyped up over this. But it's like there's so much that goes on to build up to that story, and I think that's what makes professionals, is being able to put aside the thought of that one moment and say, this needs to get captured, because with video, they have moments that are longer than one frame to tell a story. And so it's our job as photographers to build and rise to that pinnacle moment, right? And so I would just love to hear your thoughts on the value of story within your photography, because I think you're a master at doing that. So
wow, thank you. That's huge. The master is still learning. The master is still trying to figure out what makes a good story, because it is so subjective to so many people. And it does honor me to know that you enjoyed those videos. I had a fun time making them. I always like to do something different around that week between Christmas and New Year's, just kind of reflecting on the things that I've done in the past year, the work that I've churned out. And so I decided, is like, I'm just gonna tell the stories behind my 10 favorite shots that I did, and they were my personal favorite shots. They weren't like my most well received or my most liked. They were the shots that I liked the most. And behind that, they were the stories that I still enjoyed telling. That I actually like found pleasure in regaling people the behind the scenes of, like one in particular. Like it was me and my buddy Parker. We had gone to this spot in the middle of the Utah desert. It's been captured so many times, and typically people, they go there and they'll do like a spacesuit or some kind of like interstellar type shoot, and I'm still like kind of trying to. I'm blushing right now just thinking about it. I'm trying to go back and tell myself that it wasn't my idea, but it was totally my idea. And I just kind of like, turn to my buddy Parker. I'm just like, Parker, you want to get naked and go stand over there next to this big spire that it's a very phallic looking natural structure. But I was just like, just drop trowel. Let me just like snap a couple pictures. Let's just do something different here. And is it a fantastic photo? It's fine, but I just love the story behind it. That it's just like we're doing dude-war out here in the desert.
I love that.
And so, it is when you can get good at doing it for yourself, at telling yourself a good story, then that's a good segue into figuring out how to do it for a client or for a broader audience. They definitely are different muscles. It's definitely, something different in telling a personal story compared to a marketing story for a product campaign or something like that. But it's a muscle you kind of have to keep exercising. You just have to be good at looking for the story, looking for the details that create a story. I don't want to like use social media as a primary factor in how we create, but I'll just kind of break down how I compose a post and how the story sort of unfolds within that. Is I'll choose a good cover photo, and maybe we can like that's maybe like the biggest like eye catcher. It kind of sets the scene. It's a bit wider. It's a good establishing shot. And then you can swipe, and then I'll have a panorama because I love Instagram. I love phones. I miss when landscape photographs were more widely accepted. So you'll swipe through a landscape, and then I'll break it down even further, and I'll pick some further details that are magnified a little bit closer. Maybe if I'm working with a subject, it'll be just kind of like a different look that can kind of show that there is movement and there is action within this scene. And then I'll conclude with a black and white, because black and white is before anything else, in my opinion. But that does just kind of like thinking in the way that's sort of how I'll compose a story in that way. It has sort of trained me as far as what to look for in every scene that I find myself in. It's no longer enough to like go to tunnel vision at Yosemite or Moraine Lake and just get that one shot that has been captured time and time again. Artists, we're so complex and nuanced, and like you can go to those spots and every single person can find a way to tell their own story in that scene. But it definitely just kind of takes exercise. It takes exercise in figuring out how to tell your story. It takes exercise in seeing how the story is received by an audience. I think that is, that's a big thing. And that's also a big blessing that, social media gives us, is that you can put something out there and you can, people can interact with it very easily. So storytelling is a muscle, and you just got to keep keep doing that. That's kind of the big thing. I probably could go into like some exercises of what you can further do, what kind of inspiration to look for to like really give you a sense of how you want to tell your story. But I know that's a long answer already.
No, that was very fantastic. I like how you summed that up. I'm just going to highlight a bit of those points. So if you guys want to know how to create carousels like Joshua, he gave 4 tips. So 4 tips to make a great carousel, if you want to make carousels like Josh. So number 1 is make something eye-catching and establishing. Make something like a panoramic that you can view, because panoramas are still awesome,
Yes, they
despite
are.
what Instagram says. And then choose the detailed shots, because detail is really nice to just elaborate more on what's going on in the scene, things that people might not pick up on. And then maybe create black and white, lower everything, just dim everything down, just see the image for what it is, because it honestly makes you think a different way about how you create art. And so
Absolutely.
those are 4 ways to create some awesome carousels to ultimately tell better stories on Instagram, and that will, as Joshua said, play into more of how you create as an artist for clients as well.
Yeah, and I think if you just kind of like strip Instagram away from exactly what you just said, that's really the bare bones of creating a story. Establish a scene, focus on important details, and simplify. I think those 3 things are the primary 3 keys to just telling a good, well-rounded story.
I think that was some like fantastic advice that is like very practical. Put this into use today and you will tell better stories. And it's like, whether that is, as you said, in your hometown, and before you build out to go abroad, I mean, you're going to start telling stories instantly better just from those little details that you add into your photography. So yeah, that's great.
Thank you.
Great advice. Yeah. So going into clients and like the client base, how do you go about acquiring clients? I know that was something that I had thought about earlier on in my career, how to maybe utilize social media for that, acquiring new clients, or just maybe explain a little bit more about how you kind of worked into that.
Yeah, this is a very interesting, and I so don't want to portray it as like this is like the only path, but maybe I don't like getting into this because I'm a little bit ashamed, but I've been so passive. I almost kind of hate admitting that most of my clients have come to me because I wish that I could give more advice on like, this is how you create a pitch deck, this is how you like really refine your portfolio, this is how you reach out, this is like what to say, what not to say, but I'm still going to try and get into this as best I can. I remember probably my first big brand that I work with, and this, prior to this, I had done like a couple fun little things for like Express, Bespoke, other smaller type gigs, but then it was maybe like 2.5 years ago, I had Ram Trucks reach out to me. And if we're kind of like really setting the scene, I don't think I had cracked 10K followers on Instagram yet.
Really?
So I have no idea. I have no idea how they found me. I don't know what database I ended up on. I would love to know, because I have no idea how lightning struck that post. But they asked us like, do you want to do a campaign for us? I'm like, can I? Is that okay? Is that allowed? It was just kind of like one of those blessed situations. They sent me a truck for, I think, 10 days. They wanted me to take it to the Mighty 5 national parks all around Utah and just, capture it on this great adventure. And it was one of those gigs I did not feel prepared for it. Like, I had never done anything to that scale before, but I kind of used that as an opportunity to just be like, okay, I'm gonna say yes to this. I'm going to grow and develop through this. I'm gonna fake it if I make it until I have to, and then I'll have a really honest conversation of how to do it better, knowing what I know, having gone through the whole experience. Because it was a very daunting kind of thing to just be handed a truck and have that be like the primary character of a story. But again, it kind of like all circles back around to the exploration and just kind of saying yes to an opportunity that falls into your lap, because I wasn't a automotive photographer. I mean, I can take a picture, but it's like, okay, what's a truck's good side? Okay, like how do we determine this? It doesn't take direction very well. When it comes to doing any kind of gig, the best thing that you can do is just tell a story that's real. I still get reached out to by products and companies that don't really like fit into my lifestyle, so I know that I'm not equipped to tell that story. Like, I don't, like, for example, I don't have a pet, but I get reached out to by different pet brands, and I just know that's not something that I would be equipped to tell. I think that maybe one exercise that people could do is make a list of 10 brands, 10 products that could maybe be like your pillars. If you want to just like go straight into automotive, go for that. But I kind of like falling in line and this again, this kind of also goes back to the fact that I never niched down. I structured myself around the idea that there are 5 pillars kind of holding up the roof. You have like one firm central pillar, and that's kind of like the main thing that people see, and then you have 2 smaller flanking pillars on the side of that, and then 2 smaller flanking pillars on the side of that, and those could be your interests. The things that, you know, if someone looks for is like, okay, we need someone that could, you know, do a clothing brand, but we want it to be maybe adventurous, and you know, maybe it's also like a vintage clothing brand. Think about in terms of those 5 pillars. It's like, okay, adventure or outdoors is the center one, and then fashion, vintage, and then like men's lifestyle, I don't know, maybe hunting. If you can like think of how to structure your personal brand in that way, that is a very effective way for brands to find you, because you become even more specific in different niches. If that makes sense.
No, that was good. I really like the structuring your personal brand.
Yeah. Now, I think that's just a big thing that you can do, and that also becomes more appealing to brands, because you know it's definitely like a good exercise to. I'm going to call out so many photographers right now, but it's so easy to take like a watch and do like a flat lay kind of thing. But brands don't really want to see that. They want to see their product in real environments used by real people, because their product isn't going to be in this, you know, pretty well curated flat lay. It's going to be out in the world, and people want to see that.
No, for sure. I like the way that you said that too, is like, you know, you have your main thing, and then like just keep branching off into things that support that main object.
Yeah, I think it's even, you know, healthier if you look at that like almost like a personality profile, which I am one of those cool people. I like some of them. I did like the Enneagram and like Myers-Briggs, but my favorite one is actually and I do encourage like everyone to take this. It's Gallup Strengths Finders. It kind of like breaks everyone's strengths down. There are, I think there's either 36 or 38. I want to say that there's 36. There's 36 strengths. And you know, you take the test, and it actually gives you your order of how those strengths align, and usually people only like get their top 5. You know, that's like the base package of this personality test. And I think it's still true that no single person has the same top 5. There, like, if you like really break it down, there are billions upon billions of combinations of how people's strengths stack up. So when you start thinking about how your interests and your passions and your sub passions create who you are and how your work looks, that's when you become a real individualistic artist that becomes desirable to an audience or a brand. And I think that that's a major asset to lean into.
I love the way that you sum that up, and I think it just gives people a better direction of how to define themselves as within their craft. Just kind of before we wrap things up, there was a question I did get from my Instagram, and if anybody would like to ask questions on further podcasts, go to my Instagram. Then you guys can ask questions for people that I'm interviewing. But somebody had asked, what color temperatures are you using when you go into your golden hour shoots, and what color profiles are you generally using when it comes to that?
I have to like think about that, because here's the thing. Every golden hour is different. So that's true. So my color profile, and I can I would have to like go and look like how I have it set up. So maybe if you want to put it in show notes, I can share that with you and you can put it down. But I kind of,
you bet.
I shoot very flat, actually. You know, I shoot raw, as you do. I almost like to flatline the image as best I can. Just kind of like, you know, if you see, you know, raw video footage, it does kind of like have that very muted sort of look. You still have all the data there to work with, but like the image just by itself is not much definition, but it does create just kind of like a good blank canvas to go in and, you know, put your tone curve. I'm a big tone curve guy. That's where my secret sauce comes from in the editing. And then as far as like color temperature, it definitely varies. Again, one of the things, and this is, you know, a big benefit, if you're shooting raw, it stores the color temperature data to where you can like still manipulate it in post. This may not be the answer that, you know, people are wanting, but it's something that I don't and wouldn't put that much stress on, because again, it's like every single environment, it requires experimentation to figure out what you want from it. But I so wish that I could give a more matter-of-fact scientific answer there, but it is something that varies.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. I mean, most of the time when I'm out shooting just like natural scenes, I'm usually leaving it at like 5600 Kelvin. If the white balance is like completely off, it's gonna pick up more so like what my scene is showing. If my scene is more blue, then it's like cool, like that's ultimately what I will want to push anyways. That's what's introduced into the frame, you know, because you're shooting raw, like you said, like the information's there. When you're in the action, when you're moving, I know it's like kind of a bad answer, maybe it makes me seem very amateur, but you're just shooting and it's like I will deal with this afterwards, and it's like you adjust and you fix that.
I think that that's actually a more professional answer than you may think, because you do get to a point where you do create on intuition, and you start to realize that there are some things that don't make or break an image, and you're able to muscle past that a lot easier, just the more that you envelop that way of thinking.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think you covered that well. Just going in, I guess, as like a final wrap-up question, I love to ask the people that I interview, where would you like to see yourself within the next 4 to 5 years? Loaded question, I know. So
that is very loaded, because I just looking back 4 or 5 years. First of all, like, you know, it was a pre-pandemic time, like the world changed so much, but also I was a completely different person then. And it's becoming harder and harder to plan when you see the way that the script flips and changes as your life progresses. You know, 4 years ago, I wasn't a motorcyclist. That wasn't a part of my life, and now it is, and it's kind of changed my plan. So if I can like provide an answer, I hope that I'm still exploring, still growing. There's a part of me that, you know, it's like it's very possible that, you know, like there'll come a time in the next couple of years where I'll be just like, you know, photography was a good run, but I want to do something different. I think it's important to not be so married to the things that are present in the seasons that you're in. And you know, that's not to say that you be non-committal. Commit to what you're doing, 100%. But just realize that the journey can take you on a wild ride, if you allow it. It is really hard. There are some crazy days where, you know, even living in an RV and, you know, you have water freeze and, you know, pipes burst, and, you know, my sink isn't draining right now. It's like draining right into my cupboard space. I gotta fix that. But at the same time, you know, I still have more days than not where I get to say I love this journey, and I love me, and I love the work that I create. And I think that when you allow the journey to just unfold, that's when you're able to kind of give into the leeway that it is a process. You may not be your best right now, but you can be better tomorrow, and then the day after that. I think enjoy the journey is what I always say, and that's really all I got to say about that.
Yeah, your life honestly exemplifies that statement, and I definitely appreciate the honesty within that answer. I know it can be super easy to look towards lofty goals, but just enjoying the season you're in right now. Don't be married to it, because things will change. It's a definite. Things will change in your future, but just enjoy the journey that you're on today. So that was a fantastic answer, and I know it was a super loaded question, especially for somebody who loves to adventure as much as you do. So yeah, that was a very fantastic answer.
Well, thank you, Jacob. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time once again, Joshua. It honestly means the world to me to have you on this and just hear your life experiences. And I know that so many people are going to glean so much value just for their personal lives as well as for their business. And I think that there's so much that we can learn from your story, going out to adventure, be adventurous, not getting too tied down to the things that we might be fearful of, just realizing that you can overcome those fears, overcome and conquer, and do things that you never thought were possible. And you are an absolute prime example of those things, and it's just very encouraging to me to hear that, but I know that many other people will be encouraged just the same. So
thank you, Jacob. This conversation has definitely honored me and edified me, so I definitely appreciate it.
Thank you once again. Yeah.